Welcome, everybody. My name is Arjun Roy, producer, recordist, mix engineer, coming at you from Grande Prairie, Alberta, my hometown. We are recording live, although it's not live. We're coming at you from Better Than Fred's. I gotta have to. It's gonna work through it. Oh no! This is real life.
All right.
This is how it goes. We're coming at you from Better Than Fred's, excellent venue, epic bar, and purveyor of fine barbecue. This is episode 17 of a series of unedited conversations that I'm calling the Hometown Hustle. This deals with my artistic journey through the arts and music scene in the Peace Country, and all the people who have helped me get where I am today. This episode is a continuation of the conversation begun between myself and my pal, Brandon Mann. Brandon, welcome back. This is part 3. I appreciate you and your time.
Thanks
being
for
here,
having me.
Chatting again,
yes.
Covering all this stuff.
Continue on the story of where we left off, I guess.
I know. So,
and such.
You know, in my notes,
fill in some gaps.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing that you mentioned earlier that I think is worth touching upon is that this whole thing for me is like, I don't know if it's almost like therapy or whatever, but it's nice to chat about all this stuff. And there's like an overarching kind of a story in my mind of how all this fits together. And so, we did the first one and we had another part that brought us up to, for me, what was a very fundamental kind of time in my artistic journey, which was getting up to the year 2005 or so with the band No One's Alone. And in my notes, I feel like we covered up until that time. We talked about that band, we talked about us being pals, we talked about your involvement with the band, and then you starting to get into playing in a band with the singer of that band, Landsgard. And so if you're cool, so I'm just looking over here, make sure everything's recording. I'm just going to slate real quick in the middle of this.
What does that do?
It allows me to sync everything together. I forgot about this.
So do you want to start over again?
No. This is real. Okay, look.
That's the second
I
offer
specifically said that this was a series of unedited conversations, and so that both those things are going to stay there.
Okay.
Unedited, untouched. So 2005, No One's Alone. I think we talked about like Grizzfest and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I guess really this brings us up to, for me, a point where the scene here in town hit critical mass, which is 2005. Peace Starts at Home, year 1. Yeah. Sitting in this room. Did we talk about this last time?
Kind
about
of,
the meeting
but
here?
I think that we rushed that year or whatever, so we might as well do you want to just start kind of like...
Let's do it.
So just to take a back step, because we talked about the history of No One's Alone in a little bit, and I mentioned that I was a big fan of No One's Alone and everything, and how that entailed is that, I don't know, I hung out with you guys, like there'd be jams, and there's some pretty epic, like cool location jams and stuff like that, that you guys did for band practice, like Neil's uncle's shop, I think.
His grandparents'
different basements,
farmhouse.
Yeah, his farmhouse,
different basements. Corey Sewell's basement, thanks Corey Sewell.
Other places and stuff like that. So I was always around, went to a lot of gigs, did like some, spot things for you guys, sometimes driving, sometimes like being behind a mixing board with no knowledge on what I was doing for a Christmas show that you had. Anyways, so that's how we all knew each other, and I think that the previous kind of things kind of went over that. Yeah. But then me and Cadel connected on...
Cadel, just to cover, was the lead singer of the band No One's Alone, Cadel Landsgard. I believe the lineup at this time it's still Shaun McDonald on bass? Okay. Shaun McDonald on bass, Neil Farnquist on guitar, myself on guitar, Cadel Landsgard on vocals and guitar. He then transitioned to only vocals, and then the fabulous Stacey Arbeau on drums. Sorry,
so maybe Jason Landrak was like in at that point. I don't know. It's fuzzy, but this is 15 years ago now, and
oh my gosh,
yeah. Anyways, me and Cadel connected on a few different bands. I don't know if we covered this or not, but like Corrosion of Conformity was a huge one, and a few other different types of that same kind of riff rock type of bands. And then so we listened to a bunch of the CDs. I'm like, hey, Kale, check this one out, and like a bunch of other stuff like that. And then we had, so I think that he was renting a place in Grande Prairie, and then and he was, I think, Jason. I don't know how he met Jason.
Greeno?
Yeah, I think he might have been living at that place. Like he might have been renting a room there or something like that.
Was that when Jason was living with Kelly Townsend?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It was, I don't know. My memory's fuzzy on that. All I remember is coming over, Cadel playing a riff, and then me like noodling over it. And I really didn't know how to play. Like I knew stuff on the guitar, but I didn't really know a lot. And so I was a fresh, clean slate. And so it was just a different type of vibe and feel, I think, for Cadel. So he enjoyed that. And, we started jamming a bunch, and then we got Jason in the mix and Ryan in the mix.
Ryan Thorson?
Ryan Thorson at the time. And then me and Cadel quickly like just started doing a bunch of stuff. I don't know what the timeline is anymore. It's too long ago.
No worries.
But we did do that Battle of the Bands that I talked about on the previous podcast that Boy Charlie was there and Al should have won it. And then, but because we only have 4 songs written at that point in time. And I mean, it was all going quick, and it was a matter of, I think it was like November, December of
2004?
2004, and then into 2005. And then by the time it was like, it went so fast because I was gone in August of that year. So it was really only like, it was less than a year that we were doing that stuff. But in that time, we wrote the 4 songs, and then we recorded one of them, which was Synchronicity. And me and Cadel recorded that, the guitars, vocals, and bass in my apartment by the college. And with like combo amps in closets and stuff like that.
Classic.
And it was through sound cards and this is like a little bit of recording old school stuff that like it's horrible quality to record through a sound card, and like the USB technology they have nowadays didn't like it was too expensive or didn't exist. Right?
It wasn't happening at the time.
So we recorded through the sound card of the computers into like a program that was a free program, which it was Cool Edit Pro, that it was owned by Adobe and Adobe Audition. I think it wasn't it was a free program. I think
it was. Yep.
So we recorded with that, recorded just layered like track after track after track, and did like a bunch of stuff like that. Tried to make this thing sound a lot thicker because recording in that way, things didn't really sound as thick as they could. And so you did a lot of different techniques to try to fatten up the sound. And then we recorded the drums in Jason's basement with the most unconventional drum miking techniques you could ever think.
What was it? Tell me.
I don't know. We just we put a mic in the hallway outside the room and stuff like that. I have no idea if that did anything, but we had a big board. Like Jason had a big board for some reason, and
that's right. I remember
in his basement, and we ran everything through that into a computer, and then got the drum tracks down on that, and then mixed it, like added effects and stuff in the thing, but no real mix. It was really raw, right? So then we got we played a show at Fred's and not Fred's at Howler's, and we got a couple guys that were in the music program.
Okay.
It was
like Paul McLean and those guys, or someone else?
Yeah. And two guys were doing a project they did, and they we got them to do a little bit extra work, and then gave them a bit of what we sold on that. At first, it was like a demo with 1 recorded track and 3 live tracks. We recorded, so it was Synchronicity, Marley's song. Man, I can't remember. But anyways, it was a 4-track, and then eventually, for recording wise, we went on and recorded an 8-track CD, not quite full length, but more than an EP, that's for sure, with James Oldenburg.
Yes.
And we recorded it live off the floor in the studio, and then
I remember that,
patched like all the bad things out. Yeah.
I mean,
caused by I
think that's a fairly common thing to like, and if you're a band recording live off the floor, then you go through and punch in, bits that didn't work and all that kind of
We
stuff.
did it in like a matter of a night, and then he was edited it for like a couple days, and that's it. Like, punch some stuff out. We didn't really come back and do punch-ins. It was just like, here's the CD.
Yep.
Good job, guys.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, like, James I don't think he charged us anything for that and stuff like that. And he's an awesome guy for doing that.
Oh,
and,
James, yeah.
Yeah. And
I don't know if necessarily we've talked a bunch about James Oldenburg on this podcast before. He probably came up a couple of times, but yeah, I mean, I think it's worth taking a moment just to, give him a good shout out. James worked at GPRC in the fine arts department, teaching recording and such. He also taught guitar, music and such at the college. I took lessons with him.
He recorded you guys too.
He recorded the first No One's Alone single. Was that True Love? I think it was True Love. Yeah. True Love, that song got on the radio thanks to folks at Sun FM at the time. Dave Sawchuk, Darren Brown, Scott Belford, all those folks. Excuse me. And then he recorded our EP, which was the next release, which had 3 or 4 songs on it. Including the first, I guess, recorded version of the Napkin song, which, again, ended up being a thing that was on the radio now and again. But James was a big supporter of the arts. I mean, I feel like he supported all of us in some way. He recorded all of us, sometimes for nothing, sometimes for super cheap. He helped a lot of people out like that. James was a good guy.
Yeah, I think he wanted to work with Cadel. I think that was a huge part
Totally.
of it. Like, definitely didn't want to work with like the other 3 of us like as much. It was Cadel's connection. And he wanted to make music. Like he knew that Cadel had something special. His voice was awesome.
It's a great vocalist.
So we did this, and then we played a bunch of shows, opening for a bunch of different bands like that. I don't think that anybody would recognize their names really for the most part, other than like the times we did. There's the Tupelo Honey, I think, show.
Tupelo Honey.
No One's Alone opened, and we opened for No One's Alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Which we sold that demo, and it was like flying. Like that, we sold a bunch of demos that day because it was a pretty awesome show.
It was a great show. I mean, Tupelo Honey were huge at the time. Yeah. Here, they'd won some kind of contest.
They're out of Edmonton,
stuff.
right?
They're based out of Edmonton. They had, this was the time when there were like these national battle of the bands kind of things happening, and I think they had won a huge one, and so they had some momentum behind them. They'd been songwriting with like Ian Thornley, I think, at the time, and so they were from Edmonton, and so they had a big draw here. That was a funny show. Was that at Howler's?
Yeah, I think
that was at Howler's.
It was at Howler's,
Landsgard opening for No One's Alone, opening for Tupelo Honey.
So that's I think it only happened twice that like Cadel did the back-to-back shows, and the other one was the Peace Starts at Home.
That's right.
And for the other Battle of the Bands, so the first one was at Howler's earlier on. I mean, that was so early we didn't have other songs.
Right.
And then we did the Peace Starts at Home, and like Cadel wrote this like really, really long, like the whole idea was it's supposed to be so starkly different than No One's Alone. He could do whatever he wanted to. He wasn't writing music to suit radio audience. He's writing this like riff rocky type of like a lot more Black Sabbath influence, truly, right? So there's this one song, Musician's Duty, and it was truly a duty to play because it was very long and like and I love the song, but it was a just very simple and sparse, and with that song we played it, I think at the Battle of the Bands, and I think that we're just not like it's not the right audience really to play that song probably if you're wanting to win the Battle of the Bands. Luckily he had of course, No One's Alone moved on to the next round, but Landsgard didn't. But as I've talked about in that previous video, it was a hard round with Reject.
Oh yeah.
No One's Alone and Prevail. And then
my gosh.
So like Landsgard absolutely didn't deserve to win. Like even going to the next round based on the other bands that were there, because we were just together for like all those other, like No One's Alone been around, like been playing Long Time, Reject, same thing, and Prevail, same thing.
Man.
Although you guys put in the time, we were just like, let's slap this together and see and have some
that's
fun
cool
with
though,
it.
man. Yep.
And there might have been another night we might have moved on. It was hard. It's hard to say, but that was some stiff competition. Let's just say.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So,
and that's one of the things that was interesting about that time is that I feel like that was a moment. I'm sure there were other moments like this, but it was a moment when a lot of these bands all peaked. At the same time. I mean, I remember seeing Prevail shows at the time, and they were incredible. I mean, Prevail was a band that, again, I don't want to sort of define genres and stuff for these other bands, but, they were like Billy Talent mixed with some of the sort of screamo bands that were big at the time. They used that kind of a vibe. And they were really, really good, very tight, and Shane Seward on vocals. He was as charismatic a front person as you could get. Reject, same thing. I mean, they're like the original GP punk bands, along with just a couple other folks.
They had a really good vibe to them.
A really
Dustin
good vibe.
Was a great front man.
Excellent front person. I mean, just really good songwriting. Like, talk about genre, just like nailing it. I mean, they had that vibe down. So yeah, it was an interesting time. And yeah, No One's Alone, 2005. I feel like we had we've grown together and we were hitting our stride.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked I think on the previous years like that was I think honestly around that time that was very peakish for No One's Alone. Like that was some of the best times, and you guys were coming up with some of the best music at that time. I think it didn't. It was just kind of like Cadle was. I think just off the guitar at that point in time, and things were like quite solidified, right? But there was enough of like Cadle's thing in there too. And like the mix was still like the artistic mix I'm talking about, your side, Neil's side, Cadle's side, and and Shaun's side and everything like that. Because Shaun had like that one song for us, maybe there was a bassy driven song. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I can't remember either. He had some interesting ideas in terms of absolutely. He had
it was all gelling together really good, but it still had that Cadle. I think that as the thing went on, Cadle it influenced changed. I think in the band, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that for me as a No One's Alone fan, that's when the best times were. But then again, it was kind of like the most original type of lineup that you guys had with Shaun still there. And not saying Jason was bad, and like what it progressed into was just different. And that was like it's more that's the No One's Alone that I remember the best. Yeah. And that it's just like it's the same analogy of that, people can release they release albums every year, but the stuff that you grew up on when you're a teenager is the stuff that you like the best,
Absolutely.
right? And it's the same thing with No One's Alone. It's like, because I moved away after that, right? But I remember that I think we touched base with on that meeting of the Peace Starts at Home. Losing on that, it did feel like losing. I don't think that, I'm hoping that nobody felt like that they lost out of being a part of that first one, because it was such a special event. And I think there was not a competition. Everybody just wanted to be a part of this. And it was at a point where the GP music scene was really awesome. So, meeting with all the people that were in the GP music scene in this room was an epic experience. And it was just like, there was such camaraderie. I felt maybe different perspectives, but to me it was like we're all working at something together. Definitely. Which was the cool part of that, right? Absolutely. In everybody's a little different way, right? And there's so many different genres, and we like with Prevail, with Reject, with there was Welfare Jar and the Paydays in that one. There was there were a lot of bands. Absolutely. I'm forgetting a lot, and I think Boy Charlie was still in there.
Boy Charlie was there. Yeah. Boy Charlie I don't know if they became Book of Names around that time.
Maybe. Yeah.
But all those key players were doing their thing. Definitely.
I mean, this was 15 years ago, so I apologize if we forgot like some of the other bands, and I'd love to figure out which one, like which other bands, because there's got to be like 15 bands that were in that. Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were the thing went throughout the summer. And I mean, there were shows every weekend, and there were multiple bands playing.
There was
Saturday,
at least
Sunday,
3 or 4 first round heats. So I mean, that's
absolutely.
four like the 12 to 16 bands, at least, somewhere in there.
Yep.
So I mean, it was a great time to be playing music in Grande Prairie and being a part. I'm glad I was a part of it, and that I wasn't, on this. That me and Cadel got a chance to do that project together.
Absolutely.
After that, is there anything else you want to touch base with on that?
No, I think that covered. Well, I mean, we could get into a couple of little fine points. What were you guys playing for gear at the time?
Okay.
Guitars, amps.
I started with so it was a Marshall DSL 40-watt combo.
Yep.
And then I was playing a Strat style LTD.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With it was. I don't know what it was geared with, but it was. I remember the strap always coming off, so I taped the strap on and stuff like that.
Classic.
And with duct tape, and just it was a mess of a guitar. And I was only playing that because I wasn't really feeling Les Paul, and then all of a sudden it just kind of. I got the Les Paul. It had EMGs in it, and I took the EMGs out and put the original pickups in, and I really gelled with it.
Right.
And then I switched to that, and then I bought a cabinet. So I was rocking a cabinet with the 40-watt.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, for a little while.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then I moved, and I just I went and got the head size 100-watt head DSL 100, which I still have both those 2 amps today. And I had just a Les Paul standard black one, and that was
the 97.
Yeah. And then I would remember playing we used I played a Strat for a while, like Cadel's Mexican Strat, right?
Yeah, I remember that. There was a white Strat.
Yeah, it was.
That's right.
And I was using it to do there was one song that used a tremolo bar, and it would be going out of tune. So instead of, I wanted a solution where I could still just play the Les Paul the whole set, because all we did was half step down, drop D, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember buying a whammy pedal and using it for that, but it was just never the song wasn't the same with that. I think that nowadays I would use a guitar with a Floyd on it so that it would keep in tune better. And the Strat was kind of finicky because of it was kind of a low dip for with using the whammy the whammy bar that much during that one song. I can't even remember the name of that song, honestly, but. Yeah,
no worries.
It was not a hit.
It was a hit. Gotcha.
Not that any of the songs were, but so I guess that kind of. So I moved away in August to university to Lethbridge, and that kind of ended that era of Landsgard, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, so August 2005.
Around that time.
That's fascinating, because I'm trying to remember if Cadel was living in Grande Prairie at the time, because he moved into my basement at some point.
No, that was before. He was still living in places in Grande Prairie throughout the Landsgard thing. That was the end of the Landsgard portion, and then we can fast forward a little bit. I'm in university, and
You went to university where?
Lethbridge.
That's right.
And then he moved to Calgary for a little while, and that was and that's when you guys were. That's around the time when Jason Landerdrack was in No One's Alone.
Yep.
And so there was his argument was I can live anywhere if Jason is living in Edmonton. So then you had guys in Grande Prairie, guys in Edmonton, and guys in Calgary, right? So
and
it caused. I think that distance was probably a poor move, and he wanted to write more stuff with me. I went to Calgary one day. It's a 2-hour drive. I mean, and I was at university and didn't have unlimited funds that I could just go there every weekend and stuff. Yeah. So we kind of just practiced a bunch of the songs or whatever, and then nothing really happened out of it. And then he eventually, because his folks had a place there, so that's where so he could move there easily. So that's kind of what happened there. But then he eventually moved back and lived with you.
Yeah.
And then I remember recording in the house that you were living in. one of the songs that we used a custom. Cadel had moved on to, not really moved on. He was using a lot of PV combo amps,
small combo amps for recording purposes.
Yeah. However, he was using. Probably. I think he was using the Triple X still, maybe.
I think so.
For a guitar amp. I don't know. Eventually, he just decided to do with... He was using a lot of PV rages and stuff like that. And so we recorded this song called Teardown in that basement on a little custom combo amp and a rage, a PV rage. And it was just... It had like the thickest tone. We were so impressed with it.
Yeah.
And this is still... I think we're still recording on
sound cards.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think I had my computer with me, like, of all things.
That's
unbelievable,
amazing.
right?
Well,
like,
I mean, I feel like we were all doing that exact thing. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I don't know if I had GarageBand at the time. I don't know if I had gotten my Mac yet. I might have, because I got my, old cheese grater dual processor, Mac, PowerPC G5. Around that time, but I was still I didn't have an interface. I mean, I was still recording through the sound card.
Good times.
Good times, absolutely, man.
But anyways, somehow we got that thick sound of that custom, and then I think on the way back, I had that custom in the back, and it was on its backside, and then the movement of it just blew, like the speaker blew on it.
Oh no
so
way!
I replaced it. It still has I still have that amp. It's got a bass speaker in it. Okay. Actually, just a replacement as it's an 8-inch speaker, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. Because I mean,
sounds great.
I think I have the same custom combo amp, correct?
Does,
we got the same ones. Yeah.
And I don't know how we got that tone. It was just mic placement, probably more than anything. But we recorded that one,
of course.
And then there was some major drama in No One's Alone shortly thereafter. I think I've seen like the couple things that we should talk about is that seeing No One's Alone in Calgary, one of the probably last shows that Stacy was a part of.
Okay. So let me fill in a couple of things real quick before we go further with that. So end of 2005, No One's Alone had also peaked and hit kind of a critical mass portion. Cadel was playing with you. You guys had Landsgard, and then you moved away. And then Shaun McDonald was moving to Edmonton. Yeah. And so he, sort of gracefully took his exit from the band. Shaun McDonald, take a minute to give him a shout out, as an excellent human being, excellent bass player.
Absolutely.
He comes from like a, very DIY punk kind of background. And so it was cool to have that vibe, like great player, interesting bass lines, cool point of view. After he left, Stacy knew this guy, Jason Lanadrak, who lived in Edmonton. Jason and Stacy had played in bands when they were young, and they'd been on tour with a cover band, and they'd gigged a lot. And so both of them were very good individual musicians, and they were a very tight rhythm section together. And so Jason came on board, and we spent a little time at the end of that summer / the beginning of that fall traveling to Edmonton, doing some recording with Jason, preparing some tracks that we wanted to release. I feel like we may have put together an EP with Jason, and then somehow this idea came that we should record an album, and we should go to a studio and make it happen. We had a fair amount of momentum at the time. We had a lot of good music, a lot of new music coming up as well.
You guys tried recording a lot with Jason's place in Edmonton, I think, a bunch at first, right? But then eventually you guys decided to go with the studio in Calgary, right?
Yeah. So we sourced out a place called Sunday Sound. It sadly doesn't exist anymore. But the guys who ran it, you know what, I'm going to take a moment to Google this real quick, because it was a great place. And Dave, who was the former drummer of Chicks Dig It, if anybody remembers that band, they're fantastic. Dave was the guy who ran that studio. So let me do this real quick.
In the meantime, I just want to, an interesting thing just to mention with Shaun, right? That, his musical tastes were very vastly different than actually No One's Alone was. And you guys, like the talent that was there drew like Shaun to want to play with you guys, and that was awesome that he could during that time.
Exactly.
But it was a very Shaun was like the stuff he listened to was very different than even me or you or Cadel, like the stuff that we like to listen to. He was a very he liked like punk a lot, and that was different than I think any other. But he wanted to play with you guys. That was awesome.
It was fantastic, man. Shaun's a great dude. Very eclectic taste in music. So real quick, Dave Alcock, that's the guy. Dave was a drummer in Chicks Dig It and the owner of Sunday Sound Recording Studio in Calgary. And so we sourced that place out. And myself, Cadel, Neil, Jason Lanadrak, and Stacey Arbeau hit the studio in December of 2005. I feel like we had 10 days or something like that of studio time that we could afford. And so we decided to do it. I feel like how many songs were on that No One's Own record? 10 songs, I think. 9, 10, 11 songs. There were 11 songs on that record. And we prepped them, and we're like, okay, this is the move. I mean, we have all this momentum. We want to keep it going. And so we did. We hit the studio December of 2005, recorded with Dave and his engineer, Al. The record was mastered by David Horrocks, also in Calgary, of Infinite Wave Mastering. Just, consummate professionals, all of them. But that was, for me, that was a really cool experience. It was like a real deal recording studio, large space, big live room, a bunch of ISOs, pro gear. They had an old Sony console, plus like a Neve sidecar. I can't remember if it was 8 or 12 channels of Neve, but it was pretty amazing because I'd recorded all of our demos while we were songwriting. And so I was fascinated by the studio thing, and watching these guys work was fascinating to me as much as being in the studio and recording our album itself. Got some great tones. My amp died halfway through. I was playing the Mesa Boogie Triaxis preamp through a Simulclass 290 at the time. I'd switched over from my JCM 800. I think the power tubes blew or something, and so we got it replaced and then continued recording. We finished up maybe January, or maybe we went back to finish mixing in January, something like that. We took, I don't know, a couple of days to mix everything. And then we released the album ourselves that spring, 2006.
And just to, so that everybody knows, that album you can download off of iTunes
yes.
and on Apple Music and Spotify, right?
And it's on Spotify, yeah, absolutely.
So if anybody wants to check out that album, it's a great album.
Oh my gosh,
so,
thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
And and that's the album that's if you want to hear what No One's Alone and what we're talking about, that's a good place to hear what was happening at that time, right?
Absolutely.
And then, so I think
that brings up to that spring.
It was then the summer. Actually, it was during the summer that you guys were in Calgary, I think.
Oh, like playing shows?
Yeah, you guys played outdoor, like a outdoor venue, like some kind of parade
the festival.
Or something.
Yeah, so it was one of these summer festivals, the Lilac Street Festival, or the Lilac, the 5th Street Lilac Festival, something like that. That was like after a bunch of weird drama happened, though, and so like we had this album in our hands, and I still think it's really good. At the time, it was like very good for what we were doing and what was going on in terms of rock music. We had momentum, and then everything kind of imploded very suddenly.
Yeah, so I think that might have been one of Stacey's, like one of the final shows that was Stacey. So Stacey left the band shortly thereafter that, and so did Jason Lanadrak.
Absolutely.
Right?
It was, so a couple of things came up. We had 2 opportunities that ended up being the last show for that sort of classic lineup, shall we say. Stacey and Jason both left around that time.
They were both living in Edmonton too, though. So, that's the other thing.
That was part of it, right? So Stacey and Jason lived in Edmonton. Stacey moved to Edmonton. Cadel moved to Calgary. And so myself and Neil were the only 2 band members who lived in Grande Prairie. And so we would travel to just outside Edmonton to jam. And, all that kind of stuff puts a lot of pressure on a situation. It's not easy to keep a band together at the best of times, And with this kind of stuff, it complicates things lots. And so things got complicated.
Eventually, Cadel did move back to Grande Prairie.
Cadel did move back that spring for a bit. And then things imploded, should we say, exploded. Either way, both
absolutely.
Things
so, and then, so you guys...
those 2 shows
right, and then you guys played with Justin and Brent, right?
So the two shows that we had booked, the two final shows of that lineup were one was like a showcase in New York City, and one was this festival in Calgary. I feel like we had the New York City show, and then very soon afterwards we had the show in Calgary. So we needed a fill-in rhythm section to go to the States. And so we picked up Brent Hessler, who, a fantastic musician in town. He's played with Reject and a bunch of other bands. Great bassist, great vocalist as well. And Justin Staffen, who has been on this podcast before. And so we drafted them to travel to New York and play. It was an awesome trip. It was very interesting. It was definitely like the end of an era for the band. But we played the heck out of that show. We didn't get any label buzz or anything. I mean, the labels weren't looking for rock bands at the time, right? No. That's just not a thing that was happening. But we did meet a bunch of cool musicians and potentially had opportunities to play in New York City. But it was one of those situations where some of us wanted to stick around a little bit longer and play a few shows, and some of us didn't want to. And so obviously we didn't, because we couldn't do it without everybody. So we got back here, and a couple of weeks later, we had this show in Calgary. And, because Stacy, Jason, because we were all still there together, we decided to play. Because of, all sorts of weird band stuff, that ended up being the last show of that lineup. Stacy and Jason, they felt like, okay, weird stuff happened. It's time to call it quits. And so they bowed out. Cadle's time was up with the band as well, and Neil and I were, it was crazy, because I just remember that we had this great record sitting in our hands, and we're like, oh my gosh, the momentum, but what about the momentum? And so we wanted to try it out, so with Justin in on it and Brent in on it, we thought, okay, maybe we can find a replacement singer. I mean, like, replacing a singer again is impossible at the best of times. And so we, thought really hard, jammed with a couple of people. And then we had the great pleasure of actually settling, on Celeigh Cardinal, who is out kicking all sorts of butt these days all over the world. So she was a vocalist of No One's Alone for a little while, which is incredible. We played a festival elsewhere in Alberta, and we played, I think, 2 shows at Better Than Fred's, and those were sort of glorious times. Like, those shows were really cool because it was a different vibe. Having her vocals over that kind of, like, hard rock was a really cool sound. But it wasn't necessarily what was the best thing moving forward, and so. At the end of summer 2000, or in the middle of summer 2006 even, we played these shows, and then, things just kind of stopped. I think, I can't speak for other people, obviously, but I feel like, some of the remaining members were like, this, it's just too much. Like, a bunch of weirdness had happened, and that was hard to deal with, and now things were different, and that's fine. But, it's just like, at some point, you just have to call it done. And so that was it. So No One's Alone officially folded summer 2006. I was like, I wasn't ready to stop though. So, so I channeled all my frustration into writing like screaming heavy metal, which at the time was hitting its peak. That was like the time that Killswitch Engage was winning. They were winning Grammy awards. Trivium was huge. Like, all these bands were like in the charts, and metal was peaking. Yeah,
metal was pretty popular even at that 2005 stage. Like, I remember Killswitch Engage being pretty big at that time.
Lamb of God were exploding. I mean, all this stuff. And so we had, so myself and Justin wanted to keep playing, and that eventually led to the formation of the band, very briefly called Death Before Dishonor, because we didn't, we had a couple of gigs and we didn't have a name. Google, yes. If we had Googled it, I think I mentioned the story before, but I'll tell everybody again real quick. We played a show as a band called Death Before Dishonor, and we had a bunch of songs, and they were really good. We played in Peace River, but then there were some Peace River fans, of the real band Death Before Dishonor, who are a Boston hardcore band, who came out and they're like, "Oh, we came here because we thought you were that band." And, so we decided right then and there that, okay, look, obviously we have to change this name immediately. So we ended up shuffling band members around a little bit. And then we became the band Calculating Collapse in winter 2006, I guess.
Yeah, and that was winter 2006 at that point. Yeah. And
End of
great
2006.
band name, honestly. Calculating Collapse is it's much better than Death Before Dishonor anyways.
It is, yeah, it works.
So much. It's got more grit and substance to it.
It's got some more zazz.
No offense to Death Before Dishonor, because
from Boston.
Those guys might have pull, right?
Oh my gosh. Exactly.
I don't know.
Next time I'm in Boston, I'll be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone will slip me a Mickey.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get
Since
wicked
you do go
head,
to
kid.
Boston sometimes. Yeah.
I do.
So on my side of things, I guess just to continue on what was going on, a few other things that were there. Me and Cadel continued to write some more songs, but when I would come back, I could fly home with a guitar, and then I had all my gear still at my at home, at my mom's place or whatever, and we
Here
would
in town.
record in the basement, pissing off all her neighbors in Wedgwood, right?
Oh,
So and then we. Continued chipping away, adding a song here, adding a song there, doing that type of thing, and real slow go at it. He wasn't living in Grande Prairie. He had come in from Poo-Scoopy to do this type of stuff. So it was always we'd get 6 hours and just write a song, and that's it. And then he'd take it and do his thing, do his side of things with it. That might have been the advent of actually, I got an M audio interface.
Okay,
That's probably around that time that I got that. In fact, I think that he might have been living in Calgary beforehand. Actually, you know what? With the money, I think that we bought that. We had banked I managed the money in Landsgard, and so we banked quite a bit of it. So we didn't really disperse it because we're going to do something bigger with it, and then we never really did. So we dispersed it at the end, and I think Cadel bought out some of the gear from Ryan. Okay. Because Ryan was, I don't know, he didn't want it. And then for me, I think I bought that M audio unit with the proceeds of that. Cool. And that's when I got it. So the stuff I used it for, one thing that I did do while I was in Lethbridge for on music wise is that I had this, I was in this management ethics course, and I picked the subject matter of copyright infringement in music, and I did pop-up videos with a Metallica song, I Disappear, and then Bring the Noise by Public Enemy, because the two were opposing sides of the argument, should you download music illegally. Public Enemy being for downloading, Metallica obviously being against, right? And then Cadel and I wrote the music for the song, and then I told I told him the idea, and he as I was telling him the idea, started writing lyrics. That how Cadel had that ability that he could just sit and just be I want to do this, and just. And then all of a sudden, he did that with no one's he did that with Napkin Song, I think.
100%.
Yeah, he wrote it on a napkin while you guys were talking about
while we were writing it. Yeah, and then later we performed it. And there you go.
So we just recorded that song, and I played that track for the class, and everything like that.
Okay.
Explaining that I didn't sing it, of course, because but and I got a really good mark on it and stuff like that. Good. So it was an interesting. Way I incorporated music in a management degree. So
heck yeah.
I also took History of Rock both there's 2 History of Rock courses, and pretty much aced them. It was super simple if you knew anything about music whatsoever.
And that's the thing. And I mean, you know
structure of songs and stuff like that. Like Billy Joel, Scene from Italian Restaurant, that song? Yeah.
Yep.
Is that a deep track? It maybe doesn't. I don't know. It's pretty popular then. But.
It's a great tune.
Yeah. Anyways, you have to analyze all the different parts of that song. So anyways, that's how I continue on with music. And then I think that I graduated and then me and Cadel continued to do that type of stuff, this guerrilla warfare style of recording with laptop M audio unit, a Beta 57 and an XLR cable and an amp go, right? And then click record, like just record it until your fingers bleed. And then, because we only had X amount of time all the time together. And so we really got kind of decent at that. And we recorded a bunch of the songs we were working on at the end of that whole run that we had earlier, and had these different ideas floating around. We kind of solidified some of that, put it onto like CD, right? And went on that. So that's kind of like leads us up to that point. And then I moved back to Grande Prairie. You were living in Grande Prairie. In Lethbridge, I had bought a Slammer Explorer.
Oh, yes.
Right? And it was knowing that fully well that this is like practically his signature model of a thing. But it's a red Explorer.
It's a red Explorer, sure.
It seriously cost $100, like at a pawn shop, Cash Canada in Lethbridge. Yeah. I was like, I was working and almost done school and stuff like that, so I had an extra $100.
Yeah.
And so I bought this thing, and I played it. I'm just like, it didn't feel right ever to me. I know you love
the vibe
them.
wasn't right.
Yeah. But I much prefer a Gibson, to be honest.
Yeah, of course.
Now that
I understand.
I'd rather a Gibson Explorer just on the. They don't cost $100, but
of course.
Slammers are cool and all, but it was never my thing, and plus it was so your thing that eventually it led me to you had tickets to Van Halen, in Edmonton, and I was like
the reunion tour with Dave Lee Roth, circa 2008.
Yeah, and I just mentioned, I'm like, hey, I got the Slammer. Do you want to just trade the ticket for the Slammer? And you're like, yeah.
Yes.
And that's how you got number 2.
Slammer number 2.
Yeah, it was a red one, and it was like stock, and it's slightly different than your other one.
Hamer, Slammer. Yeah. I'm trying to think what I did to that. I put in spurts of locking tuners. I got Mike Munroe from GP Music, now Long and McQuaid. He has done a lot of this guitar tech replacement work for me over the years. I mean, Mike is amazing. I think all of us who go to the store, all of us who, interact with that store and have for years, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So Mike switched out a bunch of that. He modded it like my number 1. The pickups in there, though, are Dave Mustaine signature...
Live wires.
Thank you. Yes. So number 1 has EMG 8185. Number 2 has Mustaine signature live wires.
Yeah. To this day, though, played both of them, and that the number 1 is such a good guitar, and the second one never quite got there. Hey,
yeah, absolutely.
But maybe if you played that one a bunch more, you might get that. But I don't know, that your first one, it has like this really good feel to it all.
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's like there's enough difference in them that you can tell very quickly that they're a different guitar, right?
Absolutely. So, and that's the thing about, the Slammer series. I mean, they're like $100 guitars,
with wild variations and different things going on in them, like being made possibly in completely different factories. And these things have been, I remember seeing Slammers when I was like a teenager in Westminster Mall, Yamaha Music, and
and
Giovanni
Yamaha Music.
Where you bought the first one. Yeah.
That's right. It was a present from my parents. Yeah. Thank you always for Christmas / my birthday, which are close to each other, and so I went and played I don't think I played a bunch of guitars because we really couldn't afford much at the time, and so I don't know what it was about the Explorer. I'm trying to think if I idolized Explorer playing guitar players, but not necessarily.
I don't know. For me,
Hetfield.
Yeah, I was going to say that
Gary Rossington, maybe.
In that Giovanni, I would probably own a Slammer right now if they made a white model, just because of James Hetfield. But
that '84 Explorer, man,
they only had black and reds, so. Yep. Yeah, and anyway, so I remember seeing them back in Giovanni there, and they just inexpensive guitars, but I mean that was in the late '90s, and they still make them. Yeah. I haven't seen one in years in a guitar store, but I'm sure that if you went to Giovanni Music, they might have one.
Absolutely.
I wonder if that's still open. I don't know.
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I remember that was like a hang when I lived in Edmonton, the classic guitar store, music store hang. There may be some there may be some Explorer-related content coming out in the near future. Hamer, Slammer, Explorer, which we'll get into. It'll be cool. We'll get into it, but not for a while.
I already know what's going on.
You do, and soon you will as well.
I just an interesting aside, like for music stores in Edmonton, spent money at and time at Axe Music over the years, and Avenue Guitars. Hilariously, I lived in Edmonton between Grande Prairie. This time frame, it fits in here, and I totally got hired. Like I got hired on at Avenue, and I just was like, I declined it.
Okay,
and I was like, man, I think back, I'm like, that would be so much fun working at Avenue, and I didn't. do it.
It seems like a thing right up your alley too.
But I just was graduated from university. I wasn't looking for that. I was just like, and I got a different job very shortly thereafter with something else, and I just was like, I don't know, it'd been probably fun for a little bit, but the pay, it was not good.
No, of course. I mean, and you just graduated university with a management degree? I forget. Yes.
So indeed. I mean, it wasn't the thing I was looking for, but man, would have been fun, hey? But
absolutely.
Yeah. I like at that time it was like kind of the recession, so I just take anything. But oddly, I had like a lot of interviews at that time, so I didn't take that job. But Avenue Guitars was all like we'd always go there like over the years we'd go there and like just ogle the guitars there because they had like. They'd have like the Jimi Hendrix signature Gibson Flying V that's like hand painted for $15,000. You're like,
oh gosh, so all those guitars they had, like the Eddie Van Halen Frankenstein custom build, the Andy Summers custom build,
the Jeff Beck,
that's right.
Which was all like worn like his. They had the Frankenstein Eddie Van Halen. They had like so many expensive guitars, and then they had the full PRS lineup, full Gibson lineup. The weird rare Gibsons that you could find in that store were awesome.
Some of the guitar of the week or guitar of the month things.
As I became as I knew what I liked. And eventually bought guitars from them and stuff like that, because in the start, like I remember, I bought one guitar. It was like a $300. This is when I was working before going to university. That I bought like a $300 SG from them. That was the first guitar I bought from them. And I didn't buy one for years and years and years until I figured out they listed all their used gear on there, and they had some crazy used gear. Yeah, and the secret of Avenue Guitars, don't look at all the shiny new stuff in the front. Go to the back hallway, and they had these. They had like I remember seeing this this reissue '80s Les Paul Custom that was aged with like all the checking and everything on it. Oh, it was like that Alpine white but yellow.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's the dream.
One, yeah, and it was. They had some good deals on used equipment. Yeah,
well, that's where I got my where I got into the Triaxis. Yeah. I don't know how I had gotten wind of what a Traxxas was or what the deal was, but there was a used one sitting in the back under a bunch of gear, and I thought, this is a thing that I want to do.
Gotta have a shout out to Avenue Guitars. It's no longer this. It was like a claustrophobic. Like if you had claustrophobia, it would be a nightmare going into there because literally you walk in and like amps were like. Hovering like around you, and it was just wall-to-wall stacks and guitars, and
that's it.
So many things that you didn't know what to look at. It was until you knew what to look at, and then you're like, that guitar's cool. That guitar's cool. That guitar's cool. That guitar's cool.
So much cool stuff.
Play this one, right? So, and the used thing was always awesome to just to buy stuff off of, and so that guitar store was pretty awesome. A huge shout out to them. That it was anytime you ended up around a White Ave, you had to go in there. Right?
Always. Anytime you ended up in Edmonton, like living here, traveling there for shows and stuff. That was always a good move. Maybe hit I forget what that place is called, Friends and Neighbors for breakfast, or Daddy-O's for brunch or lunch or something, and then Avenue Guitars before heading back to Grande Prairie.
Yeah, and there's Gordon Price down the street too, that's where I bought my amp. Oh, that's my head too. Yep. Yeah.
And then there used to be Lillo's. I feel like all these places are closed, or they've turned into Long McQuaid's.
Long McQuaid. Gordon Price turned into Long McQuaid.
Got it.
Avenue's gone. Sadly. Yeah. Love
That's
that story. That was awesome. Guitar
that was
story.
amazing.
Okay, so then I guess so we did that trade, went to Van Halen. That was awesome.
Went to Van Halen.
And totally worth the trade.
Yep.
You got a guitar that suits you, and I got to get rid of that guitar for a good deal. Like, you don't so that was good. And then I guess calculating the claps was going.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I was living, during that time I was living in Edmonton. So this is if we backtrack, we have to backtrack. So we're jumping around here. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. It's like a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah, exactly.
Timeline.
So
jumping back.
While I was living in Edmonton and getting like searching for work and all this stuff and like working on having guitars and things. You guys were playing shows with Calculating Collapse. I remember you guys playing a show in
the Avenue Skate Park.
No, first one is Starlight Room.
Oh yeah,
with John Jones.
That was with John. That's right.
And then the second one is Avenue Skate Park. I think
with Jason. That's what it was.
Jason?
Yeah, I remember the sequence of events now. Yep.
It was a short period of time, and maybe I came in from Lethbridge. Maybe it was. John was before, maybe you guys were just touring down there, and then, well, you guys obviously were, and I was, maybe I just came up for the show or whatever, because I knew people in Edmonton, so I don't know, maybe that happened. I don't know the timeline. All I know is like, the Starlight Room was a pretty awesome show, and then the other part of it was, so the Avenue Skate Park was with All Else Fails, I think. Yeah,
that was, I mean, I got to give a good shout out to All Else Fails. Those guys became like our best band pals. Yeah. We played at a death race concert in Grand Cache and became fast pals. Since then, we traded a lot of shows. They came to Grande Prairie and played with us. We went to Edmonton and played with them, so forth and so on. And the Avenue Skate Park was great because for a long time, it was quite literally a skate park, and you'd play in the middle of like a ramp, Yeah. And so we played a few shows. I think this particular one was All Else Fails headlining, and a few bands playing before. Yeah. And it was amazing.
If you could imagine like all these like this band that's literally stepped on the floor of this skate ramp and all these like metalheads moshing right in front of them with like no barrier, no stage, no nothing. It was like if somebody like pushed into the band, you just better watch out.
Yeah, of course.
That was a cool show.
It was a great show. That was a great venue.
I definitely was living in Edmonton at that time. Yep. And then I think that when I moved back, you guys like we played a bunch with. That was definitely with Jason and you guys playing at Fred's. Yep. And I think that you guys were doing your own thing with music and touring, I think, a lot. Yeah, definitely. And so you guys were pretty busy, I think, at that time. Yeah, it became like we hit our stride, pretty quickly, and we just kept playing. Yeah. We played all over Western Canada. So I'd hear all the stories of the tour after you guys got back. Yeah, and you know which ones I'm talking about. Yes. And then I was working, and so I just see you guys play at Fred's, I think, and it was kind of like that went on for quite a while, actually. It did. Yeah. I mean, right up until 2009, we were briefly signed to Torque Records, but that was an entire fiasco. I think we've talked about that in previous episodes. But suffice it to say that Torque was the guy who ran Torque was a crook, essentially. The whole thing tanked. We had an album in the can, which we mined into an EP, which I just released. That is up on YouTube on my channel, so check it out. But it was great. It was worth it to do that. We sent the album, the EP off to get mixed and mastered professionally, and it was worth it. It was good. But that peaked with us touring across Canada in 2009. Yeah. And then that was kind of the end of it. We played a couple of shows in 2010 at the beginning of 2010. And then, and that was the end of it. And like I think that that side of thing, because you guys were touring so much, I don't know, I'm sure that, I don't know, we did a bunch of things to get like with a lot of those guys, like Chris and like Shaun. We would go to concerts and stuff to Edmonton during that time.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And things like that. I don't. It's that's more fuzzy for me because like you guys were so off doing your thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I was working and trying to like work and live and
because you did graduate university and you're working after that, and I was this was like, I mean, I don't want to say my last hurrah, but it was like that time in my mid-20s that if I was going to do some more band stuff, that was the time to do it. And so I did that until
life happens.
Until it was done. Until life happens, exactly. It was at a point, again, I feel like bands, I mean, I guess I was going to say don't quote me, but I mean, I guess this is the wrong situation to say that, but I feel like a lot of bands have like a 3-year kind of shelf life before you have to level up. Like you have some time to like cut your teeth and push really hard, and then regularly there come these times where things could end, or things could get stagnant unless you level up. And so we kind of hit one of those points.
Because once you level up, it becomes serious, and like it becomes it becomes something more than just like this relationship of 5 different people that are connected by this band thing that isn't paying the bills, isn't doing any of that stuff until it like levels up and like 100%. Becomes something. I think that you're completely right, and even if it's like there's this, I think that there is that holds merit just because people also do different things and have different trajectories in life.
Absolutely.
Having like 5 guys playing like all together for a number of years is like a pretty special thing, no matter if you're playing in a basement or on a stage or anywhere. It is it's like 5 people that have to get along for like an extended amount of period of time, and everything that I've ever been involved with since like the time that time in 2005, like I've been in other projects and things like that over the years. They all have that kind of thing, right? It's like band's like a marriage in a way that
totally
you got. It's kind of like a marriage that there's like could be 4 different other person or like 3 different other personalities, or how many people are in a band, and it can be. Eventually, there's a shelf life, I think.
That's just it. No, and that's exactly right. And then at a certain point, that's up, or it's up for review, or whatever.
Especially if it's. It certainly, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot that probably do go on for a long time and they get along great and stuff. But people move on, people move away, people, change directions in life.
Absolutely.
And it definitely, bands sometimes don't last. But when they do last, often it's either that just friends like that are doing something that is not serious or whatever, or they get big. And they get some, then they becomes a job, and they have,
exactly.
And everybody's on board because everybody wants to be on, like at that point. But it's that calculating collapse that year that you guys went on tour was probably the most trying year, because like it was, it's a lot, takes a lot to do that.
100%. Yeah, it really does.
You get to know not just yourself, but everybody else in that band.
You're in very close quarters for a long time. And like with anything, just like moving in with somebody, you get to know everybody really well, sometimes too well. Sometimes, I mean, but that's just what it is. That's the logical path that's going to follow. Wow. Okay. That's brought us up to speed. I think we've covered all the bullet points that I had. I feel like we've come to the end of one part of this arc, so maybe this is a good time to stop.
Sure.
And maybe we can throw it out to part 4 sometime.
Yeah, I don't think that we've like ended on part 4. Sure. I don't think we've ended on such a impasse like we did. Like we kind of like the last episode we rushed a whole lot of that, and I hope that we've expanded a little bit on that.
I think so. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. That sort of GP music scene peak in 2005 through some of the things that I did, we did, other bands in town did, to reinventing and iterating perhaps, and moving on in different ways until, again, the end of the one of these shelf life things that we're talking about. So, I think this is a good spot to stop for tonight. and maybe we'll pick it up again soon.
Sounds good.
Brandon, thank you for being here, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good night. Thank you, everyone. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. That's it. Thanks.